The crimes which hit the headlines, for obvious reasons, are the ones that are the rarest and the most shocking. Crimes against the elderly are a case in point. Attacks on elderly people are extremely rare, particularly in their own homes, although the publicity they receive can lead us to think they are more commonplace than they really are. But it's even more rare for an old person to be attacked without any conceivable motive. But this seems to be what has happened in our next case. Fred Maltby was in his 70s. A quiet man, he'd always lived on his own near Lincoln, farming his small plot of land. 9 weeks ago, sometime during the evening of Tuesday, October the 1st, Fred was murdered in his living room. Our film begins near the city of Lincoln. For the past 40 years, Fred Maltby had lived here in this farm cottage in Brant Road on the outskirts of the city. Fred seldom went far afield, and when he did go out, he'd use the back door, leaving it unlocked behind him. An early riser, he was always one of the first customers at the village store across the road.
Morning, Linda.
Morning, Fred. Come for your bread?
That's right. Is it fresh in?
It is.
Yeah. I'll take the usual pie for you.
Fred was quiet, kept himself to himself. He was always cheery, do anything for anybody if they asked him. He used to come in first thing in the morning, pick up his bread and milk, and probably come over later on in the day. He never was the sort of man to do things all at once. He'd come over for little bits and pieces.
Fred used some of his 15-acre smallholding to grow a variety of vegetables, which he sold from the shed next to the house. He rented the rest to local people for grazing horses and cattle. During the property boom of 1988, some developers offered Fred £500,000 for his land. That offer was quickly withdrawn once the boom became a slump, but it is possible that someone thought Fred was better off than he really was. One of Fred's oldest friends was Bill Lockley, who runs the garage next door. Fred himself was a skilled mechanic, and he'd often drop by for long chats.
Well, I think I've known Fred for about 25 years. It's getting on a bit now, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah.
He used to come very often to the garage. We used to talk about things, and he used to come for spares and repairs to his cars, tractor parts. I shouldn't have thought he had a lot of money myself, because he never spent a lot of money. I don't know, he lived in a poor way, I suppose.
As you say, you can't keep welding them up.
No, you can't. No, that's true.
It's Tuesday the 1st of October, the day Fred died. By late afternoon, the weather was becoming blustery. Fred made his usual call at the local shop for his evening paper. 2 hours later, when Irena Grint and a friend brought their horses into the field, Fred was his usual cheery self.
Hello, ladies.
Hi there.
Winter's coming early with a vengeance.
I always found Fred very chatty, actually. He knew all the people around here. He'd seen children grow up. He knew 3 generations around here.
See you in the morning.
Yeah, I expect so.
Fred probably finished his work outside shortly before 7.
Elm tea. The gypsies swear by it. I bet they do. I bet they say, what the bloody hell?
Normally, he'd spend the evening at home watching the television, although he would often go out for a short stroll.
You can taste the bark, can't you?
Just after 9 o'clock that night, a local resident saw Fred walking along Brant Road towards his front gate. That was the last time any of his friends or neighbours saw him alive. Half an hour after that, Caroline Banks had just called in at the Boundary Garage to buy some chocolate. As she crossed the road, she saw 2 men hanging around by the hedge near Fred's gate. At about the same time, Mick Cox was turning into Brant Road.
I was travelling towards the new housing estate, up the Brant Road towards Wallington, and on my right-hand side, 2 lads appeared.
As Mick braked, a white Ford Capri had to swerve to avoid driving into him. Another witness remembers two men running down the path by the local doctor's surgery, heading towards a housing estate off Larne Road. It wasn't until the middle of the next day that a friend calling round to buy some vegetables realised something was seriously wrong.
Take it out of the box. I'm sure I didn't.
Are you there, Fred?
Someone have picked it up?
Stolen the opal.
Well, it's a possibility.
Fred? Fred? Are you there? Fred? Fred? Are you there?
Beverly.
It's not.
Well, it certainly didn't make its own way out of here. Had to be Pam. Now, you're going to have to go and front her about it. And as soon as possible.
Well, Stuart Clifton, how had Fred been killed and why?
Well, it was a particularly horrific killing. Mr. Maltby had been killed with an axe, and despite extensive searches of the local area and the River Witham, which runs nearby, we failed to find it. The motive for the murder is a little unclear. The only thing that seems to be missing from Mr. Maltby's home is a wallet, similar to this one, which would contain only a small amount of money, perhaps no more than £20. And it seems particularly horrific to kill a man of Mr. Maltby's stature for such a paltry sum of money.
He certainly didn't seem to have any enemies, did he?
No, he didn't.
What are the descriptions you have of the two men who were seen running away by several witnesses?
Well, there are two witnesses that have compiled first an e-fit that you can see, and secondly the artist's impression. I should emphasise that both are of the same man. He's described as about 18 to 25, about 5 feet 10 in height. He has light brown or mousy coloured hair, cut short on top and perhaps long in the collar. You'll see that one witness describes him with an earring and the other doesn't.
You don't have such a good description of the second man.
No, the second man, his description is very meagre, really. The witnesses only saw quite a fleeting glimpse of him. He again is in the same 18 to 25 age group, has dark hair and is of similar build.
And you are satisfied, are you, that these two witnesses both saw the same two men?
Yes, indeed. In fact, the second witness saw the two men running across the car park of the doctor's surgery opposite at around the same time, and they were running with some purpose.
Now, what would the driver of that white Capri have seen?
Well, he may have seen the two men. He certainly may be able to help us pinpoint the time, because Mr. Cox is unclear about exactly what time it was that he saw the men. Consequently, we may be able to piece together the story a little better with the second witness.
Right, so we do need you, if you were the driver of that white Capri, to give us a ring. If you can help at all, I'll give you the numbers to call. If you can help Mr. Clifton and his colleagues trace those two men or shed any light at all on why Mr. Maltby was killed, you can speak to us now here in the studio on 081 811 8181 or contact the Lincolnshire Police Headquarters direct on 0522 532222. That's 0522, the code for Lincoln, 532222.
Partnership that's led so far to at least 2 violent deaths. You may recall a murder reconstruction we did 3 months ago in Lincolnshire, where Fred Maltby was robbed and battered in his home. Fred Maltby was a quiet and self-contained man whose home was in a village just south of Lincoln. He'd lived in this farm cottage for 40 years and seldom ventured far afield. Property developers had once offered him £500,000 for his 15-acre smallholding, and it's possible someone thought Fred was better off than he really was. On Tuesday, the 1st of October last year, at 9:45 p.m, a witness was driving home past Fred's house when he had to swerve to avoid 2 men running across the street. They were last seen heading towards a local housing estate on Larne Road. Since then, another man, Joe Rylatt, has been killed, and the detective in charge of the case, Superintendent Stuart Clifton, has now linked the 2 inquiries. The victims lived about 2 miles apart, both were retired, both were thought to keep cash on the premises, both were attacked on Tuesday evenings, and both were killed in the same way. Joe Rylatt was divorced and lived alone in a flat above one of the 2 betting shops he'd started up in Lincoln. One of the shops was managed by his son Eddie, and Alan had now more or less retired. He was shy but charming, fond of poetry, of music and of golf. And though he could be tough in business, among his friends he had a reputation for generosity, sometimes making loans of several £1,000s.
If your hands are apart, then you'll slice it for sure. Okay?
Twice a week or so, Joe would walk just round the corner to St Botolph's Court, which is sheltered accommodation for old people. His mum has lived here for several years.
Oh, Joe.
The last time she was to see him was the night he died, Tuesday, the 28th of January. He was with her till around 8:30. Meanwhile, opposite Joe's shop in High Street, a security guard noticed someone waiting. There may be nothing sinister in this, but a man was sitting in a red or orange C-registered Astra. Do you know who it was? He honked the horn and waved at someone.
Oh,
At about 8:25, another witness came across another car in Bargate.
I noticed a brown escort car, and I saw a man stood at the driver's side door with fair to mousy coloured hair, about 5'10", 5'11" tall, with green mountain boots or Wellingtons on.
She's asleep now.
Before he left, Joe saw his mother's care assistant. She was the last person known to have seen him before he died.
You're off now, then?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't made her anything to eat.
Oh, that's all right. I'm just going home for a while. I'll be back about 10. I'll make her something then.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Question of sport, which...
Someone else, though, was to speak to Joe that night. A friend who placed a flutter with him now and then.
The 2 programmes when Ian returns from the England tour. Bill's partners tonight are Ian...
Hello, Alan. It's Mike. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm dogging it tonight, yes. Oxford, if that's okay. 1, 2, 9 o'clock on. 50p reverse. Oh, I've got you a bad time, have I? Yeah, okay, bye. It wasn't a normal Alan, Mike telephone conversation, in the sense that he was a little more hurried. There was noises in the background, which I heard distinctly, i.e. banging, and also voices and a little bit of laughter.
Then, at 10 to 9...
I was walking down Bargate, past Rylatt's bookmakers, and I saw a bloke crouched down in the side entrance. He was wearing a suede jacket, maybe leather.
Did you see someone here as well? Upstairs, Joe had been preparing sandwiches. Clearly something, or someone, had interrupted him. About 50 minutes later, another witness was crossing High Street just opposite Joe Rylatt's shop. And this woman saw them a little further down the road.
I passed these 2 youths that were running wildly. They ran up St Catherine's. They had to run into the road to avoid 2 old ladies, and a car beeped to them. I had to stop at the traffic lights. When they got towards the lights, they shot out into the road. Again, a car had to sound his horn and avoid them. I passed them just going past the St Catherine's garage on Newark Road, and that was the last time I saw them.
Did you also see them? Or were you in one of the cars that swerved out to avoid them? Joe Rylatt's safe was open. £3,000 was missing. Next morning, when Joe's son, Eddie, arrived to open up the shop, he found his father lying dead with severe wounds to his head. Stuart Clifton, murder is rare. For a man to kill twice successively is very rare, but for two men to kill in successive episodes, it's almost unheard of.
It's certainly unheard of in Lincolnshire. Two murders that are so similar in the space of 4 months causes me to worry a great deal. I'm worried that this may develop into yet another murder, may develop into a serial killing. Because of that, I'm using Crimewatch to appeal to the public of Lincoln. I believe that there are two people concerned in these murders, that perhaps only one has done the killing, and perhaps the second one has felt the need to tell somebody about it. Tonight I appeal to that person to come forward and contact me through Crimewatch so that we can prevent another tragedy occurring.
You think it's as serious as that?
I do believe that there is the potential for another murder. I'm quite hopeful that someone in Lincoln will take the time and trouble tonight to ring us in the studio so that we can prevent yet another serious incident occurring.
Now, they make quite an odd couple, these two, don't they?
Yes, they do. One is rather large, a little over 6 foot, and the other's quite small. The bigger of the two is described as a skinny build. He's got mousy coloured hair, and he wore a corduroy coat, something similar to this. And one of the points of appeal I'd like to get over tonight is if anybody in the city of Lincoln knows anyone who fits the description that I've just given, who wears a coat of this type, then I would encourage them to ring me urgently in the studio tonight. They don't have to give their name.
The smaller guy was wearing distinctive clothing too, in as much as white, vivid white shoes, trainers or something.
Yes, the smaller man had a bomber jacket on. He's about 5'6" with dark hair, again in his mid-20s. He had dark trousers and white training shoes, which looked as if they may be in new condition.
Now, obviously, people living in Lincoln are going to be fairly concerned about what you've said. Perhaps we should make it clear that they seem to be, firstly, acting only at quite long distances in time, one from another, secondly, going for quite specific targets, but perhaps there are also things that people can do to protect themselves.
Well, yes, of course. Clearly, there are two people in Lincoln who are prepared to commit murder. We know that one is tall and one is quite short. If people are visiting and they fit that general description, then obviously the public must be aware of that. I would not encourage anybody to let people into their houses unless they're quite sure of the people that they've got at their door.
And if people have got suspicions about somebody who might be the killer, you suspect that person will have, what, characteristics that people might recognise apart from being tallish or 5'6"?
Yes, I'm fairly confident that there will be one dominant personality in this, one killer perhaps. And that killer will be known in the city of Lincoln for his extreme violence. So I'd appeal for people in the city of Lincoln who know people that fit this description and who do show these violent traits to contact us here in the studio tonight.
Well, please ring straight away. The urgency is pretty self-evident. 081 811 8181. If somebody has told you anything in confidence or you've strong suspicions, don't let this go any further, please. 081 811 8181, or try the incident room in Lincoln itself, 0522. That's 532 222. 0522 532 222.